It's an unfortunate fact that crimes are committed every day. We're inundated with the stories of people's wrongdoings on our phones, newspapers, magazines, and television. Sadly, crimes are everywhere we look, from theft to brutal murders. Have you ever heard tale of a crime so horrific that all you can think is only someone truly insane could do something like that? It's true, some crimes do truly feel more insane than others. But in the eyes of the law, it's a little more complicated than that. I'm Christiana.
And I'm Bree.
Settle in and prepare for a trial.
Because you're about to hear something strange.
Welcome to episode 47, The Insanity Defense.
This should be fun.
Yes, I hope so. So I want to give some trigger warnings right up front here, friends. There in this episode are mention of suicide attempts, discussions of intoxication via drugs and alcohol, discussions of shooting/assassination attempts, and mentions of stalking and obsessive behavior.
Man, you just went through the entire list.
And most of it only applies to the very end of the script.
Okay.
So I also want to give some really just quick disclaimers and housekeeping. First of all, we are not lawyers. We are not attorneys. We are not anything else to do with the field of law. Please do not take this as any legal advice. It is not. Also, this episode is based off of our episode from this past January about the DeFeo family murders, and it was voted on by our lovely listeners, so we hope you enjoy it. And while I'll be expanding on my research from what I discussed in our episode about the DeFeo family murders, particularly the trial portion of that, I am shamelessly pulling some of this directly from that script, so some of this might sound just a little familiar at first.
Sometimes it's good to have a refresher.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you know about the insanity defense?
I know that it's actually really hard to get it approved isn't the right, what's the word I want? Get it through?
Approved, more or less approved by a judge.
Yeah, because from what I understand, I don't know a whole lot, so this should be fun. But from what I understand, you can't just be oh, I was out of my mind. There is a battery of tests. There's a whole lot of proof that has to be gathered and evidence that has to be gathered in order for you to receive the insanity defense.
Yes,
and
correct.
Even then, it's not saying you didn't commit the crime. It's saying that you were not in your right mind during the crime, so you have a different type of consequence as opposed to you're not just off scot-free.
Correct. Yep. So the insanity defense, per the Hester Law Group website, which is one of the websites I used in my research, the insanity defense is a criminal defense strategy where the defendant may plead innocent by reason of insanity. This means that when a defendant tries to use an insanity defense, they are pleading not guilty. They are admitting that they were in fact present and involved in the crime committed, but they are also stating they weren't of sound mind. In other words, they were unaware of what they were doing or unaware that it was wrong. They are not, therefore, responsible for their actions.
Okay.
I want to clarify right at the top here, the insanity defense is not the same as the diminished capacity defense. I'm not really going to go too far into that, but for the sake of the definition, the main difference between these two defenses is that the insanity defense states the defendant is pleading not guilty. The diminished capacity defense is inherently a plea of guilt.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
It's not guilty by reason of insanity. I mean, I was there, but I wasn't in control of my capacities.
Right.
Would diminished be I'm not guilty because I couldn't
Diminished capacity means you are guilty, but they're going for a lesser.
So you still did the crime, but you weren't. It is guilty.
Yes.
So you're saying I did the thing, but they would be my client did the thing, but my client was not at a cognitive level to understand, or they were having some kind of psychotic break where they were. Okay.
Yeah, that's more the actual insanity defense.
I'm gonna learn
itself.
so much.
Yeah, it's okay. The insanity defense is not a sometimes literally get out of jail free card. There are very specific legal rules about what quantifies as insanity under the law. And as well, those found not guilty under the insanity defense are not simply free to go. They're not just released back into the public.
Go have fun.
Yeah. They normally are remitted into the care of a mental health facility. Sometimes those found guilty are held in these facilities for the rest of their lives. Other times, if they are eventually released, they will sometimes serve a longer sentence in a mental care facility than they would have if they had just gone to prison.
Okay.
So, insanity under the law. In cases where the defendant is pleading not guilty by reason of insanity, it's the defense's job to prove their client is or was, at the time of the crime, legally insane. Being considered insane by legal definition is not necessarily the same thing as someone may think of it in like layman's terms.
Okay.
So, for example, there are plenty of heinous crimes that are or have been committed that any one person might look at and go, only an insane person could do that because it's just so horrible. However, that's not the same thing as a person being legally insane. Legal insanity could be due to a number of reasons, including but not limited to a severe mental illness or a traumatic event. A direct quote from the Hester Law Group website. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, by traumatic event, do you mean physical trauma like a car accident or like abuse type trauma?
I think it could be
like either.
I think it could be either. Direct quote from the Hester Law Group website. Under the law, if someone is not guilty by reason of insanity, they may not have been in their right mind when the crime was committed. In some cases, this defense may refer to a severe episode of mental illness, but not always. A defendant may be considered insane if they were pushed into criminal activity by political ideology or acting out after a traumatic event.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that one kind of stood out to me a little bit because I could see, not even just in our country, but not in just the current time, sorry. But I could also see like people definitely using that as a way to do horrible things.
Yeah. And that's, some of this is why this defense is so hard to actually be validated in a legal terms. In legal terms, I should say. Sorry, that sounded weird the way I said that. There are several rules and tests that can be applied to prove a defendant is legally insane or was at the time of a crime. And the first is the Manhattan rule.
Okay.
This is I believe I'm pronouncing that right. It's spelled M''Naghten. The other alternate pronouncing is Menagten, maybe. I'm going to say Menagten. This was the first ever rule established to test for criminal insanity. The Menagten rule proves two different facets of a defendant's cognition, meaning a person's ability to solve problems and reason things out.
Okay.
So this is to decide whether an insanity defense is provable. Part one of this is whether or not a defendant knew what they were doing or whether or not what they were doing was a crime. This does not mean that a person didn't realize what they were doing was against the law. Basic lack of knowledge doesn't mean a law doesn't mean a person can't be held responsible for their actions if they break said law. The point only stands if a person didn't realize their action was against the law because of some form of they say a lot of the term I see is mental disease or defect, which is like a mental illness.
Which is older lingo, but legalese might be different than mental health land.
Right. Like we wouldn't say that about a person.
We would say mental illness as opposed to, but yeah, the legalese might just be a little bit different wording.
Right. Exactly. If a defendant falls into this category, they can be considered legally insane. Part two of this is whether or not a defendant understands what they did was wrong. So in this case, a defendant may very well be aware of their actions or that their actions were illegal, but they could not understand what they were doing was wrong. Again, this is due to a mental impairment, not an opinion. Mm-hmm. A person can't simply say, oh, I know this is a law and that I broke it, but I don't think what I did was wrong, so therefore I can't be held accountable.
I don't agree with this law, so like it's not real.
Right, exactly. You can't just go into a court of law and have them be like, well, they're insane, you know.
Excuse me, Your Honor, this rule is stupid. I don't like it.
Yeah, pretty much. So there, another big website I used was the Cornell Law School.
We got some legit sources in this one.
I have some crazy sources in this one. Let me remind myself. The Cornell Law School Legal Information Institute. Example that was given in the Cornell Law School website was that of a person who believes a deity told them to like murder someone.
Son of Sam.
Son of Sam.
He keeps coming.
He'll come up here, friends.
Eventually.
And I said potentially like psychosis, I guess, in this case might be.
Sorry, yes. So that would be, there is a form of delusional thinking and hallucinations where someone legitimately believes God or another being is, sometimes it's aliens too, is telling them to do something, and they truly believe they are listening to this divine being or some greater thing, and
right,
they are truly in that delusion,
mm-hmm.
and they might be hallucinating voices.
Right. And I feel like that's kind of what DeFeo tried in their trial, but he did it really badly and obviously was not insane. He was just a jackass. What? Who said that?
The jackass defense. Ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between. May we present to you the jackass defense.
That was beautiful. We need to clip that. So this rule also requires a jury to assume the defendant is legally sane unless it can be proven otherwise.
Hold on. Well, okay, so like they're proving sanity, not insanity.
They are proving insanity in this case. So
by trying to disprove sanity.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So a jury member has to sit there and say, this person is sane. I am listening to the defense tell me all the reasons to believe they're not.
Okay.
This rule, we're going to talk about the history of it,
okay,
came about from the 1843 English criminal case of Daniel Monaghan. Monaghan murdered Edward Drummond, the secretary to the prime minister at the time. In a weird twist, Monaghan actually believed that Drummond was the prime minister rather than the secretary to him. Mm-hmm. And Monaghan's reasoning for shooting the man he believed was the prime minister was that a group called the Tories were conspiring to murder him. Basically, what I found from that was the Tories were a political faction that eventually became a political party.
Mm-hmm. You know what that kind of reminds me of? Do you remember in the AI psychosis episode when the one, I don't know if I found it or Brett did, that one guy was like walking in, what's the one of like the, like walking up with a crossbow to try and kill the queen?
Oh, I do vaguely remember that, yeah.
And he was like, yeah, the like chat bot told me to do this.
Right. It's like,
I wonder if that is the modern version of God told me to do this.
I mean, honestly, it could be. It is like a form, like if a person has gotten that far, it is a form of psychosis. Mm-hmm. So that could potentially, again, we're not lawyers, we're not attorneys, but
we're also not giving psychological evaluations.
No.
Let me put that out there right now. Anything I say is
this is just
speculation.
Spitballing. Yep.
No legal advice, no psychological advice. Probably shouldn't take life advice either.
We presented the jackass defense. Like, do you really want to take legal advice from us?
Anyway, sorry.
No, it's okay. Monaghan was eventually found not guilty by a jury due to insanity, leading to him spending the rest of his life in a mental facility.
Well, that was not good at that time either.
No. So he did not have a good go of it. The next test we're going to talk about is the irresistible impulse test.
Okay.
Per Cornell Law School Legal Information Institute, again. Under this test, a defendant may be found not guilty by reason of insanity if they demonstrate that they suffered from a mental disease or defect that made it impossible for them to resist an impulse or commit a crime. So again, I would assume this is some form of psychosis.
Yeah, I would say it's okay. So that could. There's a couple of different things that would, I know I said DID, I wouldn't necessarily go to that.
No. I put that in my notes, but I would assume this is like what a person who thinks dissociative identity disorder is, so like, but not actually.
So like, I know like people confuse DID and schizophrenia a lot. Mm-hmm. And most people with psychosis or psychosis disorders are not violent, or most people who have any kinds of psychosis aren't going to hurt someone else.
No.
Generally speaking. But this would be, once again, they are feeling like they are compelled to do it because a deity is telling them to. Honestly, I also know of cases of OCD where they are, trigger warning, suicide can sometimes come up with OCD because the obsessions and compulsions will make someone believe it becomes a compulsion.
Yeah. So
I could also see that if someone has some psychosis symptoms with OCD, that can also like,
yeah,
because we talked about it in our episode, and like, you know, we both have it, just different flavors.
Yes. Hi-yo.
The compulsions, if they're ego non-syntonic, don't always make sense.
Mm-mm.
This could be the thing of like, if I don't stir my coffee 3 times counterclockwise, then an asteroid's going to fall out of the sky and hit me.
Right.
So if I don't do this act, like they might be compelled to, because if not, then their family's going to blow up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, once again, I'm not giving any like mental health things here. I could see that being a thing.
Yeah. I mean, there are, like with OCD, I've experienced this personally myself. Like, you can be doing a compulsion that is physically harming you and you can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest thing was when I was really bad was like washing my hands. My hands were ground beef and I could not force myself to stop washing my hands, and it hurts so bad.
Yeah. And it does. It would not make sense if someone doesn't have that. The other thing I'm thinking is like schizophrenia is not the only psychosis disorder.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one that people know about. But there are there's a couple that fall in the personality disorders, and there's also like a whole psychosis disorder family too in the DSM. But like there's one, I can't remember if it's a personality disorder or not, that everything is normal about the person. I think it's a delusional disorder. Everything is normal about the person except for like one belief that doesn't make any sense.
Oh, okay.
So it's okay. Let's say I'm like a very normal person, except I am 100% convinced that fish can talk.
Right.
Fish are talking to me all the time. It's great. Delusional disorders can be like that. There's depression can have really severe depression can have psychosis with it. There's trauma can even have things where people will sometimes have kind of psychosis like symptoms with it. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily hallucinations and delusions. A lot of times that's a really strong internal dialogue, and you're starting to get really hypervigilant and almost come across as paranoid. Right. When brains are stressed, they do all types of things. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I was gonna say, like, with severe traumatic events, like I think of veterans who get thrown into very visceral flashbacks where they're like hear a noise and they're put back in the battlefield, and in that moment they feel like they're literally not in their correct frame of mind.
Yes. Sometimes we call that time traveling.
Oh, okay.
Like it's a flashback where like you are literally, your brain has time traveled to the traumatic event.
Right.
And I could also see, like, let's say someone commits a crime because they think they are back in the battle, right? They think and it's their brother. And they accidentally kill someone because they think it's one of the enemy forces.
Yeah, they think it's someone that's like actually trying to hurt them.
Yeah. Sorry, that went like way off the rails.
Oh no, it's all involved here. So in this case, the prosecution has the opportunity to put forward evidence that could prove the defendant is wrong or lying, such as proof of premeditation, if in the case of a crime.
It was a flashback, and then you see a whole like went to the store and bought knives.
Yes.
Went to the store and bought like an 88 caliber.
Went to the store and bought duct tape. Yeah. Yeah.
The shovel wasn't here before.
Yeah. And there is no way to scientifically measure impulse control, so it can be an incredibly difficult thing for a defendant to secure a not guilty by insanity ruling with this test. The next test we're going to talk about is called the Durham test. Mm-hmm. This is also known as the product test. This is a test analyzing whether or not a defendant meets the qualifications to use the insanity defense. Basically, it states that if the criminal behavior / crime stemmed from a defendant's mental illness or disorder, that defendant would qualify for an insanity defense. A defendant can't be held responsible for a crime committed due to a mental disorder or illness. This rule relies heavily on psych evaluations and medical evidence. The Durham rule differs from the Monaghan test in that, per Cornell Law School, again, quote, the Durham test does not consider whether the defendant knew their actions were wrong.
Okay.
It just considers the fact of like, does this person in fact have some kind of mental law terminology, disease, or defect.
Okay.
Today, while the state of New Hampshire still uses this rule in court, it's mostly no longer used in court cases. We are going to talk about this in just a second.
Okay.
Going to give a little more history here again. Like the Monaghan rule, this test came out of a criminal case of Durham versus the United States. In this 1950s case, a man by the name of Monty Durham was convicted of breaking into someone's house. I'm not going to go into a blow-by-blow overview of this man's history, but I did want to highlight some areas to give an overview of it. Also, trigger warning, there is mention of suicide attempt here. So Durham had a long history of mental health issues. He'd been discharged from the Navy after a psych evaluation, decided he was unfit for duty. That cited that Durham had a personality disorder.
In the 1950s?
This would have been the actual event. I think this was in the 40s. He was potentially.
I'm trying to think what would have fallen on what
would have qualified back then.
Personality disorder. Go ahead.
Yeah. He was hospitalized in a mental facility several times, including once after he did attempt suicide, but survived. As well, he was arrested and imprisoned several times for various transgressions, including motor theft and passing bad checks. And early on in one of his prison stays, he had undergone, and I'm going to apologize in advance here, this is old-timey language, this is not appropriate for modern-day use, but what was dubbed as this is so gross, lunacy inquiry. Welcome to the 1950s.
Although I like the etymology of the word lunacy because it comes from lunar, meaning the moon, and like mood madness.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. He was determined by this inquiry to be of unsound mind by a jury, and he would actually go through another one of these inquiries again later in his life. And this led to another hospital stay where he was treated for, and this is a direct quote from a website, Justia, psychosis with psychopathic personality.
That is not a thing anymore, but...
yeah. Again, old-timey language, guys. I'm so sorry.
It's interesting, though, how that's because the term psychopath is still a thing, but if someone is quote-unquote a psychopath or a sociopath, they generally have antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. It still falls into those, like...
Right. So I'm
cluster B personality disorders.
So I'm not sure exactly what this meant for this guy. But eventually, this criminal history led him to breaking into a house in 1951, which led to the trial from which the Durham rule originated. During the trial, the defense used for Durham was that he was of the unsound mind, aka insane.
Okay.
A medical expert was called forward as witness to testify on whether Durham was able to tell right from wrong at the time he broke into this house. The expert stated that while most people living with a mental illness can still tell right from wrong, that couldn't determine whether Durham's condition had influence over his quote-unquote criminal behavior. Eventually, the judge declared Durham guilty, but this conviction would later be appealed and overturned. At the time of this case, there was a lot of inconsistency in the study of psychology.
Fair enough. Welcome to the 50s.
1950s. There were no specific standards to back up diagnoses or lack thereof from mental health providers. And there were also no solid definitions for terms like mental disease or defect. So due to all these problems, the newly appointed Durham rule, which was thought to be like very progressive at the time, pretty much became unusual.
Okay.
So we're going to jump forward to 1972.
Ooh, we're going so far. We're time traveling.
We are time traveling to the Model Penal Code. Introduced in 1972, this code created a firmer definition of being quote-unquote insane. Per Hester Law Group, under this rule, a person cannot be guilty of a crime if they cannot understand criminality or are unable to conform to the law.
Okay.
Also, friends, I want to throw in here, I meant to say this at the top, there's a lot of direct quotes from my articles in here. Everything that I used is linked in the show notes. Some of this was, because it is legal terminology, was extremely difficult for me to paraphrase because they're very just like cut right to the point. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh gosh, how do I make this make sense without it taking me 1,000 years to say? An important note, one of the terms used in the Model Penal Code is, quote, mental disease or defect. Essentially, to my understanding, that means mental illness. That's what we've been talking about.
That would be my thought too. I don't really know the legalese side of that as
Right.
much as I do the mental health and behavioral health side of that, but that would also be my guesstimation there.
This term is not applicable to aberrations caused by repeated criminal offenses or antisocial behavior. That means that the model penal code can't be applied in these kinds of cases. Per the Cornell Law School website, this rule was intended to prevent, again, direct quote, intended to prevent the use of the defense by repeat criminals, psychopaths, and sociopaths.
Which is interesting because some people who fall under those might be labeled with like different, but I guess that's differentiation between like if they do have antisocial, narcissistic personality disorders, they would still know right from wrong. They just might not have a whole lot of care about that.
Yes.
Is that the difference as opposed to like psychosis or delusion or psychosis,
right,
not being in your right mind?
Right. And one of the things I was reading, like I imagine this would apply to like serial killers. Like a serial killer that gets caught after years and years of killing a whole bunch of people can't be like, well, I'm insane. In certain cases, they can. I mean, we hear in certain cases, I listen to a lot of true crime. So there's a lot of times where people will do these like absolutely horrific things and then just try to fall back on the insanity defense. And it's like, no, you didn't just black out. You didn't just do this. You didn't, I've heard the people try to say like, oh, that was, what's the movie called, like Split, where the person's like, that was Patricia. People try that, and it's like,
that's not how it works. That is not even remotely how dissociative identity disorder works.
No.
One of the serial killers that I could see, I don't know if they got the insanity defense, was, I can't think of what the name, it might have been like the vampire killer or something. I have to look this up. I don't think you were in your right mind.
That's that sounds like not.
It's like you might have still known that killing was bad, but I like
if you felt like you had to do it to survive, like vampires have to drink blood to survive.
I'm not saying, I'm not defending this person,
right,
but I'm like, if it's the case I think it is, this person was definitely not grounded in reality.
Yeah. Okay, I kind of want to cover that now.
I have to look it up then.
Yeah, we'll
make sure I'm not speaking absolute nonsense.
I mean, either way. All right. So the last thing we're going to look at here is the Comprehensive Crime Control Act. This legislation was introduced in 1984, and it reformed federal criminal laws, including the insanity defense, because basically things were starting to get extremely, extremely complicated. This stuff needed to be streamlined and, made more accessible, I guess you could say, almost. Basically, it helped to regulate the criteria of the insanity defense usage, requiring defense teams to prove that clients attempting an insanity plea were, in fact, directly influenced by mental illness and unable to understand what they were doing or unable to act reasonably at the time a crime was committed.
Okay. I mean, fair enough, because I could just see like people come out of the woodwork being like, yeah, I totally was not in my right mind when I killed 23 people.
Right. And in some cases, maybe you weren't. But in plenty of cases, unfortunately, you absolutely were. So what about intoxication? The argument could be brought forward that an insanity defense could technically be used for a person who is intoxicated through either drugs or alcohol. This is where the discussion of alcohol and drug use comes in, friends. So trigger warning if you want to skip this. Intoxicating substances can cause an altered state of mind, so it stands to reason that an intoxicated person committing a crime could fall under the category of not knowing what they were doing. And I remember listening to a podcast, I think it was Morbid, everyone take a drink of water, where a person broke into someone's house when they were drunk because they thought it was their own home, because they were just not in their right mind. The short answer to this question is no. An insanity defense is not generally permissible when intoxication comes into play, but technically it could be more complicated than that.
Well, sorry for jumping ahead, right? Because my thought is like, you choose to get intoxicated. You choose to do substances.
Yes.
But I could also see like, what if someone did MK Ultra things, like the government was giving people acid. They didn't know they were being given.
Oh, that would be a weird one to cover.
That'd be a fun one.
Yeah.
They didn't know they were being given like drugs. Or if you have a really, really weird medication reaction, like you're taking a med and you're like one of 0.9 people in the world who has this weird, because like, yes, you took it, but you didn't know the reaction. Or like what if someone is dosing someone and they don't know it? Did I jump ahead and steal your thunder?
No, you basically gave a very good overview. So we're going to talk about it.
Yay.
First, we need to look at voluntary versus involuntary intoxication. These are both basically what it says on the tin. Voluntary intoxication is when a person takes an intoxicating substance, such as drugs or alcohol, knowing the consequences of those actions, aka they will be in an altered state of mind via being drunk or high. And I want to throw this in here. We're not saying this in any kind of judgmental way. This is just looking at this on a surface level of like, yes, this is what happens when you take these substances.
Because addiction is very much a disease, and it is something that is very, very hard to overcome.
Yes.
So that's a good point. We're not like, if anyone is struggling with any kind of use, we support you in your recovery. We're not throwing any judgment there.
No. Plus, even we're not going to judge anyone for sitting down and having a beer after dinner. So yeah, we just wanted to throw that out there. Like, this is not meant in a judgmental way. This is, like I said, this is just talking about the facts. All right. So involuntary intoxication is when a person ingests an intoxicating substance without realizing it. This could mean being tricked into ingesting drugs or alcohol, for example, having a drink spiked, or like eating a pot brownie when someone willingly withholds information that there were drugs in the food. This could also be, unfortunately, more nefarious, such as one person physically forcing another to ingest something they do not want to. If a person willingly and knowingly takes a substance that will alter their state of mind, they can't use an insanity defense because they voluntarily intoxicated themselves. This is why a drunk driver that causes a car accident is held legally accountable for their actions. However, in the case of someone who committed a crime due to being involuntarily intoxicated, the insanity defense could technically be used. It's not the best defense to put forward in that case.
So like, okay, this is kind of a trigger warning, but say like someone got roofied, and then they don't realize it, and they go to drive home and they like end up in a car accident.
Right.
They could potentially not get as intense of a charge if they didn't know they were.
Because someone literally spiked their drink. They drank something not knowing
that it was spiked. Okay.
Right. So as mentioned towards the beginning of this episode, those found not guilty by reason of insanity in legal trials are typically sentenced to time, if not life, in a mental facility. Therefore, this really wouldn't be a good defense for a person who was found legally insane due to involuntary intoxication.
Fair enough.
Because they shouldn't necessarily have to spend their life in a mental facility when it's like, I don't necessarily have a mental illness, but like someone literally spiked my drink or forced something down my throat that I didn't want.
Would that be the incompetency? Or whatever it was, the incompetent, what was
it? Diminished capacity?
There we go.
No, diminished capacity is more, I didn't do a whole lot of research into it, but I think that's more of, yes, I'm admitting I did this crime, but I shouldn't be as heavily punished for it because of XYZ. Okay. So I guess you could, maybe diminished capacity would be used.
We're not lawyers.
Yeah, we're not lawyers.
Yeah, there's a Fall Out Boy song that's like, I'm like a lawyer, by the way, I'm always getting both of us off. Or something.
They do have some good one-liners, I will say.
One of my other favorite like early-ish titles for a song is Reinventing the Wheel to Run Myself Over.
I personally am a fan of Just One Yesterday. Anything you say can and will be held against you. So only say my name, it will be held against you. Sorry if that was really bad.
No, they're fine. There's another one too, and it's not the lawyer one, but it's like a whole legal thing. The DA is dressed to the nines in the mirror. He practices all his. What's the name of that song?
Fall Out Boy. Chime in. we need to go see Fall Out Boy.
What is that song? I saw them already.
I did too, but I'll go see them again.
I always had to sing off there.
It was fun. We'll say it at the end when we do our little thing. So I want to talk quickly about competency to stand trial. This is important to criminal cases because if a defendant is not found legally competent, they cannot stand trial. You figured it out?
At the end, I'll at the end
shout it out.
It's like anticipation.
Okay. It is a constitutional right that a person who has been accused of a crime has a right to a fair trial. If a legally incompetent person were forced to stand trial, this would be a violation of their constitutional rights, as the trial would inherently not be fair. Legal competency means a defendant is, quote, per justia, able to understand the proceedings and play a role in their defense. If a defendant is irrational in speaking with their attorney, or their understanding of the criminal proceedings are completely nonsensical, they could be considered legally incompetent to stand trial, in which case everything would come to a standstill. In the case of the insanity defense, legal competency to stand trial does not refer to the defendant's legal state at the time of a crime, but to their state of mind at the time of a trial. In other words, a person that could be considered legally insane at the time of a crime can still be considered legally competent to stand trial later.
Okay, that makes sense, because like if whatever they're like, if it is like a brief psychotic episode, they might be like, brief is the key word there.
Correct. Yep. And there are rules here. Like there was even, I read something about if a defendant is medically examined or goes through a psychological evaluation, and they are found to be like, if you took XYZ medication, it would bring them back to a state of competency. A judge can, like a judge can mandate that. You can't just sit there and be like, well, I'm legally incompetent, so we can't move forward. Like,
Halidol is one of the injections that they give to people who experience like delucinations. Yeah. Hallucinations and delusions. I think it's Halidol.
Halidol. Okay.
I think that's the name of that med, where like it's pretty widely used in those populations.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think it's Halidol. I could be wrong. It's an antipsychotic.
Okay. So I'm going to wrap this up, LOL, by talking about I say LOL because this is where most of the trigger warnings apply, friends. I am going to warn everyone.
Oh, delightful.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about John Hinckley Jr. So we learned about one very famous case where the insanity defense was attempted but failed. I want to wrap up by discussing a famous case where the insanity defense was actually successful, with the case of John Hinckley Jr. Please note, this is a crazy case, and I could have gone much deeper into it, but for the sake of brevity, which is not my strong suit, I tried to keep it surface level. In 1982, John Hinckley Jr. was tried for the attempted murder of then President Ronald Reagan.
Man.
Yeah, big one.
What a person. Okay.
So I'm going to give the most basic of backstory here because this could literally be an entire episode in of itself. I really want to cover this, so please ask me to do it. Even if you don't ask me, I might do it anyway.
Fair enough.
John Hinckley Jr. had a history of mental health issues growing up that only grew steadily worse as he got older. He consistently struggled with depression. Trigger warning here. He contemplated suicide multiple times and also did attempt on more than one occasion. He did survive. He also developed extreme obsessive and stalking behaviors towards the actress Jodie Foster.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. He saw her in a movie called Taxi Driver.
Okay.
And these stalking and obsessive behaviors were later cited in his criminal trial. He also had a history of stalker-like behavior towards President Jimmy Carter and later President Ronald Reagan.
There's a pattern there.
There is a pattern there. On March 29th in 1981 in Washington, D.C., Hinckley opened fire on President Ronald Reagan as he was leaving the Washington Hilton after giving a speech. He killed Press Secretary James Brady and injured both policeman Thomas Delante and Secret Service agent Timothy McCarthy in the process. President Reagan was hit in the chest and underwent 2 hours of surgery to remove the bullet that had lodged in his lung. Oof. He did survive this assassination attempt. During the trial, the prosecution made the case that there was premeditation to the attempted assassination. And for this, they used video footage that caught Hinckley in a Jimmy Carter campaign, as well as bringing forward a witness that stated that Hinckley had done target practice at the rifle range where said witness worked in December of 1980. Because I'm like flying through this, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal. Like, oh, he was at a Jimmy Carter campaign. He went to multiple campaigns. Jimmy Carter was the president before Ronald Reagan. Mm-hmm. He went to multiple of these campaigns, and there was other evidence showing that he was definitely like he wanted to murder the president.
And premeditation, but at the same time, a level of obsession that is
weird,
unusual.
I really want to cover this case because I'm very curious to see, like, just the little bit that I've researched into it. I have thoughts.
Okay.
But
we can put that on the list.
Yes. The defense team, on the other hand, brought forward the insanity defense. Hinckley's father testified, saying that he had forced his son to go out on his own and forced him into a situation he couldn't cope with by being out on his own. Hinckley's former psychiatrist, Dr. John Hopper, testified he had misdiagnosed Hinckley and did not pick up on the fact that he must have been suffering from a severe mental health crisis. Lead defense psychiatric expert Dr. William Carpenter told the court that he believed Hinckley had schizophrenia. So his thoughts were that Dr. Carpenter's thoughts were that Hinckley pulled pieces of personality from characters in movies and books, as well as celebrities, such as John Lennon.
Would that be schizophrenia, though? That sounds very much like some kind of other... Anyways.
Yeah. I want to cover this case. I'm
not the most well-versed on psychosis disorders. I will say that much. I know a lot more about some of the trauma and dissociative disorders than I do. Like, I know I'm pretty well-versed in, like, the OCD disorders and the trauma disorders, but...
Right.
Some cluster B personality, but, like, the more psychosis personality disorders and the psychosis disorders, they are not an area that I've studied a whole lot.
Okay.
Anyways, continue. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. So he pulled these pieces of personality from different people and then kind of used them to form his own personality and worldview, which led Hinckley to feel that he needed to, quote unquote, rescue the woman that he claimed to be in love with, Jodie Foster. Long story short, Carpenter believed that while Hinckley knew that shooting the... Excuse me, that was rude. Long story short, Dr. Carpenter believed that while Hinckley knew that shooting the president was wrong on an academic level, he couldn't see the wrongfulness of it on an emotional level. Mm-hmm. And he just couldn't fathom the consequences of his actions, that the consequences his actions would have for the victims of this crime.
So very high levels of delusional thinking and very low levels of insight.
Yeah. So at the time of the trial, the jury deliberated for 3 days before finally delivering their verdict. Mr. John Hinckley Jr. was found not guilty by reason of insanity for the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. I made myself stop here.
I bet this would be an interesting case because I'm sure there was I'm sure the media probably had a field day with this.
Mm-hmm. I remember reading there were a lot of people that were like, yeah, that was not justice. I have thoughts, but I also definitely have certain biases in this case when I was reading. So we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it at some point.
We're just getting all kinds of episode ideas.
We are.
Like MK Ultra.
What was it? MK Ultra, assassination of Ronald Reagan, and then there was wasn't there another one we talked about?
I think there was.
Oh my gosh, what was it? Oh, the vampire case.
Oh yeah, the vampire.
Yeah.
I'll have to look up to see if that actually is what it is.
We're going to have bonus episodes, not really bonus episodes, but polisodes, if you will, based off of this polisode.
Yeah, for real, it's like an infinity loop.
Yeah. So, closing thoughts.
This isn't really this is very interesting because I love psychology. Mm-hmm. And this is like legal stuff and psychology very much together, meshed, right? And like we said, right, do not take what we're saying about the legal stuff or the psychology stuff verbatim. We are not giving psychology or legal advice. Mm-hmm. Like I have a degree in the psychology fields? Yes. But I am not giving any legal advice.
No.
Or legal.
Or medical.
Or mental health. But it's fascinating, right? Because I do think it's really hard for people to wrap their heads around, just in general, like how could someone do certain things? Like there must be something going on that makes them not quite grounded in reality. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are certain cases that, for some reason, I guess the one that kept coming to my mind in this case is this is almost a trigger warning in and of itself, just saying this, but the Oslo bombing and massacre. Mm-hmm. Or was it Oslo? There was an Oslo bombing. That might not be what I'm thinking of. It was a case of a man that it was a mass shooting of a camp, and I don't want to say any further than that because it was a horrible case. But this guy killed a whole bunch of people in the space of minutes, and I remember listening to this case and being like, "How is this guy sane?" Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, legally,
he might not be.
He well, in this case, he was like he was not. he was not considered insane. But yeah, you hear these cases and it's like, how, or even just like stuff you hear on the news, like how can someone like do that in their right mind? And it's like, well, technically they are.
I think people are very good at convincing themselves that what they are doing is right. I think we see it all the time, right? It's something might seem so abhorrent, but people are also really good at justifying their own actions.
Yeah, very much so.
So there's also kind of the psychological thing of that, where it's like, you know, people might, I can't think of it off my head, like cheat on a test, right?
Sure.
And I know that's wrong, but I'm going to justify it because I really need to get an A.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if I don't get my degree, bad things are, like, that's just, you know, a small example, but I do think, especially the bigger things, people will justify all types of stuff that they know probably isn't morally or socially correct.
Right. And in their own minds, they're like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Or not, maybe they're not even saying it's not that big a deal, but in the grand scheme of things, blah, 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 blah. It's like,
Brains are wild.
Brains are wild.
That's a good place to end that segment.
Yes.
All right.
Go to questions.
Are you ready for the questions? What drew you to this topic?
Our lovely listeners for this polisode.
This one almost didn't win.
Yeah, I was surprised.
What was winning until like a couple of...
Unicorns. The unicorn tapestries. What? Unicorns.
Unicorns are insanity.
Which shocked me. I'll have to put that out again because a lot of you guys did vote for, you wanted me to do an overview of the unicorn tapestries, which let me dig into my art history.
That's wild.
I know.
That one was winning and this one, like, bam.
Yeah, the one that I thought was going to jump to the top surprisingly didn't because it was insanity defense, the unicorn tapestries, and World War I defectors living in no man's land.
It doesn't surprise me this one did because people love true crime.
That is true, yeah. I thought it was going to be between this one and World War I, and World War I got the least amount of votes, which shocked me. But
the people have spoken.
The people have spoken.
Was there anything you wish you could have researched more into?
The Ronald Reagan assassination attempt.
Yeah.
I think it's just given I'm going to do an episode on this at some point.
What did you find the most strange about the topic?
Again, I want to talk about this. I want to do more research. I am shocked that John Hinckley was found legally insane, but we'll talk about more about this later.
We'll put a pin in that.
We'll put a pin in that.
We'd love to hear from you. If you have a suggestion for a strange or mysterious topic, a comment about an episode, or just want to chat, please reach out.
You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube. Comment directly on our episodes over at Spotify and YouTube, or review our podcast as a whole on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or both if you're feeling so inclined.
Find us on Instagram at something_strangepod and on Facebook at Something Strange Podcast. You can also check out our strange content on our YouTube channel at something_strangepod. We'd love it if you'd subscribe.
If none of that suits your fancy, you can send us a Gmail at somethingstrangepod24@gmail.com, and the 24 is numeric. Well, strangers, it's time for us to part ways.
Until we meet again, stay safe out there.
We'll be back again soon with another Something Strange.
Fall Out Boy song is You're Crashing But You're No Wave.
Hey, you're crashing but you're no wave. That's fun.
I was like, I had no clue.
Have you ever seen a shadow linger in the corner of your eye, seen a flashing light dart across the sky? Have you ever wished upon a candle to make your wish come true? I'm sure you've told a haunted tale or two. Are you interested in learning the pagan ways? Witchcraft, grimoires, candles await. Have you ever seen the living dead and stood still instead of fled? Cryptics are fun, but the universe has our eye. The stars align, shows us our signs, and we're here to discuss the divine. Welcome to Moon Brews, a supernatural podcast, hosted by yours truly, Haley.